Deep in Wales's long memory is a history of violence and bloody curses, where the deeds of noblemen and warrior princes come back to haunt the living world. Acts of treachery and vengeance leave their stain within Wales's haunted castles, where wandering spirits of the night have become the castle ghosts of Wales.
To the innocent eye, Wales is a glorious country, a peaceful, lovely land. Prydferth mae Gymru, as the Welsh say in their ancient language. Beautiful is Wales. But things are not always what they seem. Look a little closer and you will find a darker side to this country, where you cannot always trust in appearances.
Wales is a land of ever-changing scenery. Stark, bare mountains give way to soft valleys that glisten under the rain. Water is everywhere in this rainy country. Wherever you are in Wales, you are never far from the sea. Over the centuries, many Welsh have lost their lives in the savage waters. Each breaking wave is said to be the spirit of some poor drowned soul come back to haunt the living. For the Welsh, water holds special meaning. A mysterious underworld exists beneath lakes and in damp underground tunnels across the country. Legends tell of bottomless pools where monstrous creatures live. They bewitch passing travellers, drawing them to their death. Fierce and powerful creatures dwell in this dark, wet world. The symbol of Wales is the red dragon, called a draigwch. These winged dragons are said to have the feathers of a peacock's tail with all the colours of the rainbow. Even in death, dragons are dangerous, as their venomous teeth can kill anyone who touches them. Wales has a turbulent history. Castles and great houses testify to lives of murder, betrayal, lust, and vengeance. In the southwest of Wales, a haunted medieval fortress houses the persistent ghosts of a beautiful, lovesick princess and an ugly, vicious animal. Carew Castle stands on a grassy mound above the tidal waters of the Carew River. For more than 9 centuries, it played an important part in Welsh history. Originally a military stronghold, it was modified over the years into an Elizabethan mansion. Now an elegant ruin, Carew appears empty, but eerie, inhuman cries are often heard at the castle. And the figure of a woman dressed in white continues to haunt Carew's dark corridors. The apparition of the lady in white was seen in the summer of 1996. A local scientist, Angela Ferguson, was researching the activities of a bat colony at the castle. As was her routine, the scientist settled down to spend a long night monitoring the movement of bats to and from their nests in the Great Hall. She had been working for several hours when she glimpsed a shape above her head. Through the half-light, she saw a white figure, a woman, walking silently towards a window high in the wall. It was as if the woman was floating in mid-air, gliding on a long-vanished floor. The figure then vanished through solid stone. Although shaken by the apparition, the scientist noted everything she witnessed.
When local people heard the scientist's account of the otherworldly visitor, they knew the identity of the ghost. She was the lady in white, and her story belongs in the annals of Welsh history. Her name was Princess Nest, one of Wales's most vibrant characters. Nest first came to this castle as a young bride, but her restless ghost searches for a man who was not her husband.
In the year 1100, Wales was still mainly ruled by Welsh princes. But the Normans, having invaded and conquered England, had also settled into many parts of Wales. The young Princess Nest was given in political marriage to an Anglo-Norman, Gerald of Windsor. Nest was a great prize, the daughter of a powerful Welsh prince. She was beautiful, charming, and intelligent. Indeed, she is thought to have been the mistress of the English King Henry I, and to have borne him a son. As part of her dowry, Nest brought her husband Gerald lands at Carew. The castle was built to be their new home. Nest was a dutiful wife, and during her marriage she bore Gerald 5 children. But love intervened and changed her fate. In 1109, an event occurred that shocked all Wales. Nest had a cousin, Owain, the son of a prince. Having not met since childhood, the two were brought together at a banquet. Owain was captivated by her charm and beauty, and she likewise enjoyed her cousin's company. By the end of the night, the handsome, impulsive Owain determined to take her for his own. Late one night, Owain entered the castle with several companions. To cause a diversion, they set fire to another part of the castle and crept up to the room where Gerald and Nest lay sleeping. Gerald and Nest heard the commotion and feared it was an attempt to kill Gerald. Nest helped her husband to escape. When Owain entered the room, he found Nest alone and carried her away. The Welsh were scandalized by the fate of the abducted princess. They thought she had certainly been violently kidnapped and raped. The country was thrown into turmoil. But history records the princess was a willing prisoner. During her 2 years with the young Owain, she bore him 2 children. Their initial attraction had turned to love.
Gerald's honour had to be avenged. The wrath of barons, princes, and the king himself fell on the heads of Owain's clan, and in the bloody conflicts that followed, Owain's father was killed, and the hot-headed Owain himself fled to Ireland.
Nest was returned to her husband and family. Gerald's wife once more, Nest resumed her life at Carew. But Gerald was tormented, humiliated by Owain's deeds, troubled by his own cowardly escape from the castle. Gerald felt he was the object of ridicule. He bided his time until he could settle the score with Owain. This period of history saw many battles, and an uprising in South Wales in 1116 brought Gerald and Owain together as unlikely comrades in arms. It seemed as if the two men would put their past behind them, but Gerald's resentment soon caused blood to spill. Observing that Owain had gone out riding alone, Gerald seized the moment. He quietly summoned a group of his men and slipped out of the camp. Alone and off guard, Owain suspected nothing when he saw a guard approaching and stopped, making himself an easy target. He was shot dead with an arrow. Gerald at long last had his revenge. Nest outlived her husband Gerald, and her children founded great dynasties. But Nest's true love was always her young cousin, the passionate Owain, who stole her away and shocked a kingdom.
There is a theory that over time the intensity of an image slowly fades. A figure in a red dress dims to become a pinkish apparition, dwindling away to perhaps a sound only, a swish of fabric, and then no more than a presence, a sense of someone passing. Princess Nest lived at Carew 900 years ago, and yet her ghost is still recognizable.
Local people believe she still looks out of a window at the castle, longing for her murdered lover. Is her love for Owain so strong that it has not faded after so many centuries? The lovelorn princess is not alone in haunting Carew. Even more disturbing are a pair of ghostly appearances that plague the castle. Heavy thudding footsteps have been heard. And at the windows a horrible sight has been seen. The shadowy, frightening face of an unusual pet named Satan. Its blood-curdling cries and a shrill, piercing whistle often fill the castle. A 13-year-old girl visiting Carew one Sunday a few years ago will never forget the strange sight that awaited her. Her family had nearly completed their tour when they entered the ruins of a grand chamber. As her parents admired the view from the room, she wandered away from them. The girl felt herself drawn to the remains of an old fireplace. As she moved nearer, a monstrous image appeared. A monkey. Lips pulled back in a snarl. Her parents could see nothing, but disturbed by their daughter's distress, they sensed something evil had been in the room.
The apparition that the girl saw in this spot was the phantom of a monkey known as the Carew ape. This room, with its fine views over the water, seems a delightful place. But the people who work at Carew have always been aware of its ghostly occupants. Simon Hancock was an assistant here at the castle at the time the girl saw the monkey that so terrified her. And shortly afterwards, he himself experienced a haunting. Simon, what happened?
I came into the castle one evening to lock up, like I'd done so many hundreds of times before. And I stood at the bottom of these stairs, about to shout, "We're locking up." And I heard a very large noise which rather startled me, and I realised that it was footsteps. There was an incredible feeling for 3 or 4 seconds as though somebody was standing in front of me.
Simon didn't know what the footsteps were, but they may have been connected to the ghost of the monkey and a most ghoulish scene. In the early 1600s, the castle was leased to a one-time pirate of the high seas named Sir Rowland Rees. Sir Rowland was known for a hot temper, zealous religious views, and foul language. He exploded in rage when his favourite son, Ewan, fell in love with the daughter of Sir Rowland's tenant, a lowly Flemish merchant named Ludwig Horwitz. Ewan told his father that he would never give up his love. In a fury, Sir Rowland told his son he never wanted to see his face again. Ewan took his father at his word and left caring. Sir Rowland sunk into a black despair, raging with grief and anger. One moment he called out for his beloved boy, the next he cursed him to hell. Sir Rowland often arranged banquets for his old captains and officers. The nights were filled with heavy drinking, and always there was a disturbing presence at the table. A monkey. Sir Rowland brought the strange foreign creature back from one of his sea voyages. He named the monkey Satan, and it became his closest companion. At the banquet, Sir Rowland cruelly mocked his guests, and the demonic monkey would mimic its master, screeching with cruel laughter. Soon no one came to the castle, knowing they would be the vicious entertainment at the strange dinner table. On a bitterly cold night in March, Ludwig Horwitz, the tenant whose daughter had inadvertently caused the rift between Sir Rowland and his son, came to the castle to pay his rent. He knew Sir Rowland's feelings towards him, but worse, trade was bad that winter, and he had only part of the rent he owed. Horwitz was admitted to the castle and brought to Sir Rowland. Sir Rowland sat at the table, his monkey in a chair opposite.
Then I pour you a drink. Very generous, sir. Very generous. You had a pleasant journey here.
Horwitz explained that he had only half the rent. Sir Rowland seethed with anger. All the while the monkey stared at the guest. Horwitz put down his wine, saying he would not drink where he was not welcome.
As for your daughter,
Sir Rowland cursed the visitor and his daughter for bewitching his son. Horwitz would not hear his daughter abused and raised his hand to the old man.
raise your hand to me.
For the insane Sir Rowland, this was the final straw. He ordered his monkey to tear out Horwitz's eyes. Sir Rowland blew on a silver whistle. With a shriek, the beast sprang at Horwitz, who fought the creature and finally threw it to the floor.
Tear it to bits! Come back!
Horwitz escaped from the room, leaving the wounded ape and the raving old man. Horwitz wanted to leave, but the night was so foul that a kindly servant, to make amends, insisted he stay. After a warm meal, their conversation was interrupted by the shrill sound of Sir Rowland's whistle. Then came a dreadful cry of pain and struggle, and through it all a peal of wild, demonic laughter that died away to a long, terrifying scream. When they opened the door, they saw a sight that neither would forget to his dying day. Lying near the fireplace was Sir Rowland, his throat gouged open. The creature's face lay in the flames, its eyes still glaring, its teeth fixed in a ghastly grin. Both master and ape were dead.
Had the creature been excited by the night's violence, refused to submit to its intolerant master, and turned on him? Or had the frantic Sir Rowland committed suicide by baiting the savage animal until it attacked him?
Are the footsteps heard in the tower those of Sir Rowland, pacing the room in anger? Like the footsteps, the reason why the ape appeared to the young girl in broad daylight cannot be explained. What is known is that the monkey named Satan returns to its master's castle. Its demonic laughter and Sir Rowland's piercing whistle haunt Caerul's vast draughty rooms in an echo of those long ago violent days. Across the mountains of North Wales, in another castle, a terrible secret has come back to haunt modern-day visitors. In the Vale of Conway, beneath the Rock of the Falcon, sits Gwydir Castle. Originally home to one of the most significant families of North Wales, Gwydir is infamous for paranormal events and a wraith-like spectre centred on an area known as the Ghost Room. And the Swallow Falls near the castle are haunted by the face of a man crying out in agony. The name Gwydir is derived from the Welsh Gwydir, meaning field of blood, a reference to the horrific wars that took place here in the 7th century. Those battles are a distant memory, but so many mysteries are attached to the castle that the name is still appropriate today.
But remind me who it was who designed it.
For years, Peter and Judy Welford had watched the estate slip into disrepair. So when they were about to be married in 1994, they bought the castle and set their hearts on making Gwydir their home and bringing it back to its former beauty.
Peter, when you and Judy bought Gwydir, did you know the place was haunted?
Well, it's certainly always been regarded as one of the most haunted castles in Wales, and this is something we'd heard about. And there was this curious room that was mentioned in the 19th century, the Ghost Room, and a sort of passage outside it, and there were supposed to have been lots of apparitions and a peculiar smell associated with this thing.
Peter and Judy were intrigued by their new home's ghostly history. They asked a friend, an expert on the paranormal, to investigate Gwydir. Their friend, Gary, came to Gwydir with his equipment and explored the castle. He became very interested in the ghost room and the passage outside it. He set up his equipment there. When Gary checked his equipment later that evening, he knew a manifestation was imminent. The temperature suddenly dropped by 10 degrees centigrade. And the electrical capacitor short-circuited. Past experience told him an overwhelming paranormal force was present. It seemed as if Gary had unlocked Gwydir's ghosts, for shortly after his experience in the ghost room, the castle erupted with supernatural energies. One afternoon, Peter and Judy's neighbours were walking through the castle. In the west wing, in the passage just outside the ghost room, they both saw something that stopped them dead in their tracks. Floating near the floor, directly in their path, was a pinkish-purple, ethereal, glowing mound. It seemed to move slightly in front of them. At the same time, the couple was overwhelmed by a foul odor coming from the nearby recess, a vile smell of decay, of rotting flesh.
The substance Peter and Judy's neighbours witnessed is known to investigators of the paranormal as ectoplasm. It can be liquid or solid and is usually faintly luminous. It is cold to the touch, sometimes even emerging from living people from their mouth or their eyes, or sometimes, as in this case, appearing as if from nowhere.
A possible answer to these mysteries came when Peter and Judy opened the castle to visitors. The young couple on holiday were among a group of tourists. They wandered from room to room. Then the husband went on ahead of his wife. The visitor was a big, no-nonsense sort of man, not the kind of person one would imagine being susceptible to seeing a ghost. But he told a remarkable story. He was adamant that he had seen a man in old-fashioned clothes appear before him in the upper hall. The man had walked back and forth very confidently in front of the visitor. His presence had clearly been extremely disturbing. Fortunately, the visitor was able accurately to describe what he'd seen. The apparition wore a long cloak with an elaborate ruff at his neck, and he had a distinctive type of beard. Peter remembered he had paintings of the previous owners of Gwydir waiting to be hung. He looked through them and found a portrait of a man from the Tudor period who exactly fitted the description of the ghost. It was Sir John Wynne, Gwydir's most famous and feared lord.
Why was Sir John Wynne haunting the castle? Had the paranormal activities, the ectoplasm, the dreadful smell near the ghost room, arisen from the threat of investigation? Peter and Judy delved deeper into the history of Gwydir, and they uncovered a dreadful secret.
In 1580, on the death of his father, the 26-year-old John Wynne had taken over as head of the family and returned to manage the Gwydir estate. An ambitious young man, Sir John was appointed a Member of Parliament and a Justice of the Peace. For his services he was knighted by King James I. Sir John presented the local town with houses for the poor and gave money to build a school. At Gwydir he proudly carved his blazon on the wall. But Sir John's ambition turned into a lust for power and wealth. On his estate and in the local towns, the people grew to despise him.
It was felt that Sir John was abusing his public office for private gain. He was bribing officials, evicting tenants unlawfully. Even families with young children he was terrorizing. He was described as aggressive, proud, and domineering, more to be dreaded than loved. In other words, he was a tyrant.
However, Sir John's sins went much deeper. He had a long marriage, and his wife, Lady Sidney, bore him 11 children. But like his benevolent public image, his role as a faithful husband was also a lie. Like many men of his position, Sir John wielded absolute power within his estate. If his amorous eye fell on one of his serving girls, they had little choice but to comply with his demands. Most girls succumbed and quietly slipped away when he tired of them. But for one serving girl it ended in tragedy. The sordid secret was revealed when Sir John made a dreadful deathbed confession at the age of 73. Sir John revealed that many years before he tried to seduce a young girl. The seduction quickly became violent. During the struggle, the poor serving girl's head struck the wall. In the end, the girl was dead. Compounding the murder, Sir John admitted he hastily buried her in a recess in the wall. He ordered workmen to brick up the opening and seal the body in for good. Sir John died in 1626 and was grandly entombed in the local church. His deathbed confession was disbelieved by the few that had heard it, and it remained a secret. But the people of the Conway Valley by now felt a great hatred towards that tyrant. For them, Sir John's spirit would never find peace, however elaborate his earthly resting place. People came to believe Sir John's tormented soul was trapped forever in the local waterfall called the Swallow Falls, there to be punished, purged, spouted upon and purified for the foul deeds done in his days of nature. Many saw Sir John's anguished face through the cascading torrent, and threw rocks at his hated image as the crashing water mingled with his cries of pain. The castle owners, Peter and Judy, tried to uncover hard evidence about Sir John's murder confession. Then, during recent restoration work, they made a fascinating discovery. An inscription was found carved into a chimney. It shows the letters I-W and a heart, and then the letter I. I-W stands for Johannes Wynne, that is, Sir John Wynne. But there is no clue to what the single letter I stands for. Peter discovered the chimney was altered by Sir John at some point in the 1590s, when it is recorded that he undertook major building works.
What's most disturbing is the place where Sir John was supposed to have entombed the girl's body is directly underneath that inscription, carved nearly 400 years ago.
Does Sir John's presence still remain at Gwydir Castle? Does the tyrant's legacy of evil connect his ghostly appearances, the terrifying emergence of ectoplasm, and the foul smell coming from the recess near the ghost room? What does the inscription mean? It is as if murderer and victim are locked together within the castle, one desperately drawing attention to her resting place, the other, the tyrant, still seeking to assert his power. Peter and Judy felt that although they couldn't control Gwydir's ghosts, they at least knew what they were dealing with. Then, not long afterwards, the couple made another chilling discovery. Peter was down in the cellar clearing away some recent floodwater. As he shone his flashlight across the surface, he saw several small floating objects. When he examined them in the light, he saw that they were small bones. After clearing the cellar, he saw masses of bones sticking out of the clay. He collected about 200 in all, and then called the police.
The bones were taken to a forensic laboratory, and it would be many weeks before Peter and Judy could find out their identity. Could the bones belong to the unfortunate serving girl? Or to another of Sir John's victims? Then another altogether more friendly soul took up residence at the castle. Judy, how many dogs have you got?
Well, we've got 2 dogs, 2 fawn-coloured lurchers. The story really began when a neighbour came over for dinner and saw 3 dogs playing together outside in the garden, and it was quite uncanny. And then the whole thing began to make sense when I actually saw the 3rd dog, so-called the ghost dog, several times in the house. It was a solid dog.
Eventually the police gave Peter and Judy their forensic report. The bones, all 200 of them, were those of a large dog, centuries old. The couple instinctively felt that their phantom hound must be the dog in question. They planned to rebury its bones in the cellar. But the police, thinking the bones of no further interest, had already incinerated them. Peter and Judy had grown fond of the ghostly dog and hoped to see it again. But since then, the playful dog, Gwydyr's happy ghost, has not been seen. Gwydyr Castle is busy with ghosts. The same is true at another castle, where a series of eerie events are based on one tragic story. The castle lies in the south of Wales, in the lush vale of Glamorgan. St Donat's Castle dates from about the 14th century. The castle, well preserved and maintained, fascinates historians and visitors alike. Now home to the College of the Atlantic, St Donat's is a centre for students from all over the world. But the castle cannot ignore its ghostly heritage, as one student discovered as recently as 1996. William McDowell has been a student at the college for the past 2 years.
William, can you tell me exactly what happened to you that night here under the Portcullis Tower?
Right, it was in November 1996. I'd been studying late in the castle. I shouldn't have been there, it was after lights out. I packed it in about 2 in the morning. I was coming through the inner courtyard, and as I came through the inner gatehouse, I looked towards the portcullis and I saw the figure of a man standing just here in the portcullis. And I thought it was a member of staff, so I hid back behind into the inner gatehouse. So I looked again, couldn't see anything. So I carried on through into the portcullis, looking around me, couldn't see anyone. And just as I was leaving right out the other end, I heard footsteps behind me. And then turned around and there wasn't anyone there.
The only explanation I can think for it is that it might have been a ghost.
The ghost that William saw was only one of the mysterious hauntings that have occurred here at St Donat's. To discover their identity, we must look back over 100 years to the experience of one of the owners of the castle.
In the 1860s, St Donat's was bought by Dr. Nicol Khan. The family set about restoring parts of the castle, but they could not settle happily. From the moment they moved in, disturbances began to happen. Day or night, the harpsichord in the drawing room suddenly began to play. The keys moved on their own even when the keyboard lid was shut. More upsetting was a repeated sighting in one of the castle bedrooms. Time and again, a bright light would appear in a corner of the room, waking the sleeping occupants. Then the light evolved into a terrifying image, a large, glaring eye. This unblinking eye filled the room until it slowly melted into the light. Then the light would suddenly extinguish. Dr. Khan's family tried uneasily to live with the castle's supernatural events. But something happened that made them realize the unquiet spirits at St Donat's could not be easily brushed aside. One evening, as Dr. Khan was on his way to bed, he saw a shape move in the corner of the room. As he walked forward to investigate, a deep, evil growl came from the blackness. To his amazement, he saw a pair of amber eyes. In fright, the doctor tried to retreat, but he was almost knocked over by a sudden blast of wind. flashed back to the amber eyes. But they had gone. Then he heard a rapping sound on the window. Looking out into the blustery night, he saw the outline of a woman. A shadowy hag stood in a long black cloak, beating against the window pane. She moved slowly away into the night. At her side was a black dog. Dr. Khan watched as they vanished into the air.
These ghostly happenings were too much for Dr. Khan, and he was ready to sell St. Donat's, but in one last desperate attempt to banish the disturbing spirits, he invited a noted exorcist to visit the castle.
When the exorcist arrived, he quietly surveyed the castle and chose the bedroom haunted by the glaring eye. He then requested that the doctor sit downstairs while the exorcism went on. The exorcist used no tools, holy water, or herbs. He simply sat and prayed, calling the powers of darkness to come forth. The supernatural beings awakened and the spiritual battle began. Bright light filled the room, and the disembodied, penetrating eye appeared. The sound of music rang in the exorcist's ears. Downstairs, Dr. Khan felt the temperature drop. And a blast of wind whistled down the stairs. As it passed, he saw for an instant the old hag. The exorcist, drained and exhausted, came downstairs. He could not be sure that the spirits had left the castle, but he was sure that the paranormal events were linked to the famous Stradling family that had lived at St. Donat's for many years. What had happened in the Stradling family centuries ago that had resulted in the terrible hauntings? For over 400 years, St. Donat's Castle was the Stradling family home. They grew into a dynasty that was involved in the highest state affairs of Britain. With prosperous marriages, they fathered an unbroken line of male heirs to carry on the Stradling name and power. Young Sir Thomas Stradling inherited the castle in 1735. Recently graduated from Oxford, he was known for a certain wildness. He loved parties and fun. During his ownership of the castle, the sound of laughter and music filled the air deep into the night. In 1738, Sir Thomas left St. Donat's to go on a grand tour of Europe with a college friend, Sir John Tyrwhitt. The day before they set off, the friends made a pact. If one of them were to die, the survivor would inherit the other's estate.
Thank you very much. Well, here's to us.
Shortly afterwards, in the French town of Montpellier, in circumstances that were never fully explained, Sir Thomas met a mysterious and tragic end. Word from France hinted that the assailant was none other than Sir Thomas's best friend and travelling companion, Sir John Tyrwhitt. It was said that Sir Thomas was deceived by his friend, manipulated into taking part in a duel. Sir Thomas, the last of the Stradling family line, was shot through the eye and killed. Duelling was a brutal custom, common at the time, and the Stradling family considered it a heinous sin. The Stradlings supported King James I in putting an end to the practice. The family believed duelists went to the inner circle of hell to be eternally tormented.
The Stradlings' fierce condemnation of duelling was a dark premonition of a tragedy that would befall the family heir, Sir Thomas, a tragedy that would collapse the House of Stradling and bring the proud family to an end.
Just a few weeks after Sir Thomas's departure, several villagers witnessed a terrible apparition, one that all Welsh people dread. Moving in a swirl of wind towards the castle walls, they saw a hag with her vicious hound at her side. The hag, dressed in a long black coat, is an ancient Welsh legend. She is called Gwrach Ribyn, the ghost of death. When she and her hound appear, the Welsh know someone has died. The very next day, the castle knew the meaning of the Hag of Death's visit. Having waved goodbye to their young master only a few weeks before, all at St. Donat's were in deep mourning as they awaited the return of his body. His corpse was laid out in the drawing room. Candles around Sir Thomas's coffin were lit, and the servants withdrew. Sir Thomas's corpse lay peacefully, but not for long. A gust of wind blew open a window, and one of the funeral drapes caught fire. Soon the whole coffin was ablaze, and as the flames licked upwards, the portraits of all the Stradling ancestors glowed bright red before burning to a cinder. Sir Thomas's young body was never given a proper funeral.
The true circumstances of the fatal duel were still in question, but suspicion fell squarely on young Thomas's friend, Sir John Tyrwhitt, who stood to benefit from the death. A dispute over the ownership of the castle ensued, but in the end Sir John took possession of St. Donat's. Ironically, shortly afterwards he himself died, and the castle was sold.
Never again would a Stradling inhabit St. Donat's. The young Sir Thomas had brought tragedy to the family, and after the fire, his body was never laid honourably to rest. For the next century, there was no resident lord. The castle was neglected and gradually became partly ruined. It was at this time that St. Donat's began to be haunted. Ghostly music filled the empty rooms, the echo of Sir Thomas's happy times at the castle. An apparition connected to his death, a glaring luminous eye, appeared in the room that was his bedroom, a constant reminder of his horrific wound. And the legendary Welsh hag, who was seen at the time of his death, appeared again at St. Thomas. The effect of Sir Thomas's death must have been so powerful that these spirits clung to the castle. But despite its ghostly reputation, the beauty of St. Donat's always attracted attention. In 1925, American newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst bought the castle. St. Donat's benefited from Hearst's huge wealth. Repairs and alterations were carried out, and the rooms were filled with fine antiques. No more word of ghosts was heard. Until 1996, when the ghost of a man was seen within the castle walls. Was it Sir Thomas Stradling returning once more to his ancestral home?
The Welsh have long memories, and many still believe the castle to be haunted. And hereabouts remembrances of a night more than 200 years ago, handed down from generation to generation. The night the hag passed over St. Donat's with her sleek black hound of death.
Omens of misfortune are not unusual in Wales. In valley or mountain, ancient beliefs still exist. And at the center of these beliefs are castles, each hiding its secrets. But sometimes, for a moment, they are revealed to us. A beautiful princess still searches for love in the living world. Violent memories stay trapped within the crumbling stones. Supernatural substances terrify the living.
As we've seen, ghosts come in many disguises. Sometimes even the ghost of a living person can be seen, whether it's across the other side of the world or much nearer to home. Just goes to show, never trust appearances.